set, hut, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sound of gold and blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50, the 10, the 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tavon Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Gold and Blue.
And now recorded from the CRW studios in Almost Heaven, West Virginia, it's the Country Roads webcast with your host, Jordan Cruz.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the CRW podcast here for Season 7, Episode 195, where we got to, unfortunately, review the Backyard Brawl from 2024 this year. West Virginia looked like they could have had victory in their hands after a strong second half, but lets it slip right through their fingers right there at the end. Pitt makes the plays that gets it done. West Virginia falls 38-34. We're going to dive into, the particulars of that game, of course, and then kind of what it means moving forward for the Mountaineers here. It is looking, like some gloomy times throughout Mountaineer Nation, but hopefully maybe we can find a little silver lining for you in there somewhere. And joining me to help me do that, of course, my co-host, Steven.
What's going on, everybody?
And Steven, a lot of places we could start this thing. Eventually we'll probably get to talking about some stats from it and talk about that here in a bit. And then we'll wrap this up by, kind of putting it behind us and looking forward to, the next week after we do a little recap of some scores around the Big 12, of course. But I guess to start it off, man, one of the main questions that we can ask to kind of get into it is, do you think this was the worst loss of the Neil Brown era to this point?
It definitely feels like it. It's only been 24 hours. We've had time to digest it, only for about a day now. But I've mentioned that to you guys several times. This game to me has certain elements that feel like what it felt like in 07, and I don't know why it feels like that.
Strong words,
but not the same caliber of team that was. Even though I've held them up on a pedestal, and that's not to knock them. I still think that the talent's there for the most part. Again, I just go back to how bad some of the coaching's been in a lot of aspects of this season. So I'm not necessarily, I know that it's no secret that Neil Brown is very much back on that hot seat.
That was going to be my next question. I was going to ask
you. If not only for the simple fact of like 99% of the fan base is calling for his head, more so than they've ever had before. Even the ones that were supportive of Neil Brown in the past are even calling for his head now. So I'm not necessarily saying that needs to be the case right now. But I definitely do think that we need a defensive coaching change. I know you mentioned Shadon Brown and Jordan Leslie possibly.
Those are the main culprits, right?
Those to me are the main culprits. One thing I'll mention before we get really into the things of this game is defensively, I think the one coach that this staff needs to go after is Jamal Adaff. Whatever role you put him in, I believe he should be a defensive coordinator. I think he's proved at several different destinations now that he has what it takes to be a defensive coordinator, and a damn good one at that. He did very well at WVU, and quite frankly speaking, and Brad's touched on this several times before, our secondary has not been anything. I mean, with credit to B.D. Bishop last year, with all due respect, our secondary really hasn't been anything since Jamal Adai left this program. And people can get mad at him all they want to for taking those recruits with him. That's the name of the game in college football in 2024 as we see here today. Kids don't really commit to a program so much as they commit to a coach. And I promise you, that's another thing I'll touch on the reflective side of this. If you fire Neil Brown today, bye-bye Nico Markiel. And you can say, well, maybe he'll stay. Nope, I don't think it'll happen. I think him, along with 90% of this roster, will leave, not maybe to follow him, but they will leave this program if that's the case. And that's the one thing I will still give Neil Brown credit on right now is he has done a damn good job in recruiting. And it's the best it's been since the 80s, in my opinion. Because I think it's better than recruiting, even though that it hasn't developed on the playing field like it has in years past. You know, I know we had better years in the mid-2000s, but even then, our recruiting wasn't as well as it is now. We got 2 and 3 stars then that we developed into that talent, whereas now we're getting 3 and 4 stars. So I just,
But it's like we talked about it in the past. I think Neil Brown checking every box, but one of the most important one wins. Unfortunately, that's how it's been here. As of late, and I'm right there with you, man. I'm more on the fence than I've ever been. I'm waiting to see what happens here in Big 12 play. Just give it the benefit of the doubt because conference play is so important here in the 2024 season. So there's still a chance. I feel like, Lloyd Christmas on Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. So that's kind of how I'm, still sitting on the fence. But don't get me wrong, man. If, we end up losing record this season, if we end up, continuing to look like this with nothing being done, I'm going to be just as upset as everyone else because, with what the product you put on the field, there has to be some type of changes. And as you mentioned there, I think the defensive side is the first place you're going to look. And the one thing I keep going back to is, in this offseason, when we lose our safeties coach, Dante Wright, and instead of going out and hiring, another coach to coach the safeties to get in the secondary to help Shadon Brown, they hire, a coach to specialized in coaching the spur position, which used to be, the bandit position. And so you have one coach overseeing both that entire secondary and Shadon Brown, cornerbacks and safeties, something that's, not really done a lot throughout college football that I know of. And so that was a bold move right there to begin with. And then now as you come out looking like you do on the back end throughout the beginning of this season, it just shows what was that? Was that a smart move in the offseason, a smart coaching move right there? And of course, that's got to be on Jordan Leslie or Neil Brown, one of the two there. And then especially it looks even worse on Jordan Leslie though when they talked about this past week or so with the struggles they've been having just in the first 2 games before this Pitt game, that Jordan Leslie was going to personally work more with the safeties and the back end continue to look just as bad. In this game, if Pitt would have thrown on every down, we would have been in a lot of trouble. Shout out to the front, shout out to the run defense. Andrew Jackson's doing a great job with the defensive line, but the secondary was just trash, man.
Yeah, absolutely. The defensive front looked a lot better than what we gave it credit for going into the game. All credit to TJ Jackson. Trey Latham made a lot of good plays.
TJ Jackson's a stud.
TJ Jackson is a stud, and I still stand by that we have a lot of talent in the back end. It's just not being used in the correct ways in the correct schemes. And I'm tired of sitting here until I'm blue in the face saying that. But that's why I can't. I mean, we can. But also, I do want to on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know if we need to change there, but nobody on offense has looked the way that they should look.
And it was
even in this game as well as they played at times.
Yeah, it's like the question of how they evaluate personnel because, the guys that have been the backups at receiver look better than the guys that they've picked as starters for the most part, save for, a few exceptions. Justin Robinson, Jaden Bray, those guys. How are you misevaluating it that badly? And like I said, it's unfortunately all coming back to coaching. When you put a lot of these, up together there in the addition column, that's what it equals out to.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. I don't know. Justin Robinson made arguably the best play, one of the best catches of the year, possibly. But
that is
the only play that I can point to and say, oh, yeah, that's what we expected to see this season. One play out of 3 games.
And I think the coaches just dug themselves this big hole right here. Like, this wouldn't be so bad right now, this reaction that's happening throughout the fan base. One reason that I think it is happening, though, is because all off season, anytime these coaches were in interviews, they went out of their way to talk about this is our best team, it's the most depth, it's the most athletic team we've had. We've got corners that we really like. We can do some, really good things with those guys. And even on, Neil Brown, hyping up, Garrett Green, like he was going to take a huge step this year. And, I love GG to death. He goes out and fights for us. I don't want to knock on him, but I'm just more talking about the coaches hyping this team up and getting all the fans here drinking the Kool-Aid and then coming out and putting this product on the field. Obviously, they're going to have a pretty bad reaction from that because I think that GG looks, similar to what he looked like last season, but without the added element of kind of creative play call. And seems like they've been trying to go to more just straight drop back passing or handing the ball off. I don't remember a ton of RPO looks, any read options there for G to have a chance to pull the ball, not really rolling him out of the pocket, stuff that he really succeeded at last year. So it's just like, why are we changing that up? And you getting the fans all hyped up like it's going to be a better thing for us, I guess, maybe trying to set us up for the fall. I have no idea, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it's they had what we thought was a really good receiver in Hudson Clement. I'm not knocking the kids at all. I mean, they're still good. They're still good football players, but they just haven't done much this season. We thought Hudson Clement was going to do great. We thought Justin Robinson was going to do a lot more. Jaden Bray was going to do a lot more. Widener Gallagher was going to do a lot more. A lot more players that we mentioned in the preseason that I can mention right now, but
the thing is, they told us that they're the ones
right. But that's what I'm saying. Like that's what I think the game plan. That's why I think the game plans had switched because they thought they were going to be able to sit in the pocket and pass the ball a little bit more because they, I guess with the way that the line has changed from last season, they thought they had a better chance with pass blocking rather than run blocking. Ironically, I think we've done a lot better in the run game still this season than we have in the passing game. So
I don't know.
Hopefully, that's one adjustment I hope to see is that they go back to letting GG be able to scramble out of the pocket and improvise on plays a lot more, where he was a lot more successful. That's what makes GG good.
That's what. Do you think that he looks uncomfortable this year a little bit? Like it seems like that through the first 3 games to me. Like,
absolutely.
It seems like he doesn't seem like himself, and I've seen other people say this as well. Maybe his body language even is a little bit off doing what he's doing
because he's playing a game he's not comfortable with. They're asking Garrett Green to be an entirely different player than he's ever been in his career of football. Why would you ask? I know he was a baseball player, but he's clearly a better runner. I mean, he can make throws every now and then, but I mean, our offense was a lot more successful last year when you have a 3-headed monster, and that's what you really thought you were going to get in this year's offense with then flashes to be able to go over top of people. But that's another thing, we may need a change at receiving coach,
Well, if it keeps going the way that it's looked in the first 3 games, they might not have to worry about it because it might be a whole staff change at the end of the season if it keeps up like that, man. I mean, it's rough because I think I agree with people's sentiment that I've been hearing that, a lot of teams left on our schedule are better than that Pitt team. And, they're going to see the tape and know we're just going to drop back, throw it about 40 times. And what are they going to do? Because right now it looks like, what can we do on that side?
I'm going to hold back from sharing what my recent prediction is for the rest of the season.
Got to withhold judgment for maybe.
Or should I say it? Should I say it?
Hey, man, I mean, if you want to let it go, let it go. I don't blame you, man. You're feeling how you're feeling, may as well let it all loose.
I feel too cynical about it. I
mean, that's the times we're in, unfortunately.
I'll wait.
All right.
Until,
he's going to withhold judgment for another week. During the bye week, because we got the bye week after that.
I'll wait one more week. All
right.
See how
that'll work. That'll work. But speaking about, how you feel there, which leads me kind of to this clip, which kind of goes right along with what we were talking about there with the defensive side of things. I'm going to play you a clip from Neil Brown's post-game press conference. We'll play about 60 seconds or so of this. And I kind of just want to get your thoughts on it because to me, it's really telling, for one, sounds like this could potentially mean, what we're talking about is a move on the defensive staff side, especially with some of the comments that he makes there. But two, I don't know if I really like what he's saying here, and we'll talk a little bit more about why after.
But yeah, a lot of it on scrambles, and then we didn't play the deep ball well, and that's kind of it is when it happens 3 weeks in a row. It kind of is what it is, and so we got to make some changes and some corrections. Yeah, we played some different guys back there at corner. We played 4 guys at corner. It's tough, Mike, till you go back and you watch the film to really assess. It's easy to look at the stat sheet and say, shit, they threw for 379. That ain't very good. You know what I mean? Like, and it felt really bad watching it on the sideline. But until you go back and watch it, it's really hard to assess the personnel. And so I'll give you a better answer on Monday. Yeah, but I mean, you are what you are. I mean, our personnel is our personnel. We got to play them better. We got to play better. We got to coach them better. But it's not like we got people waiting in the bullpen.
All right, so a lot there to unpack, but to me, one of the most telling comments was the last thing that he said right there at the end, talking about the people waiting in the wings. They don't have nobody in the bullpen. It's like, bro, y'all went and added how many defensive backs this offseason in the transfer portal? Was it
and
6?
Talked about how much depth we had at defensive back.
But they're only playing 4 corners. We haven't seen Jacoby Spells. We haven't seen the Jackson twins. All 3 are guys that they talked about in the spring glowingly. Even in fall camp, they were talking about Jacoby Spells glowingly when he came back from his injury, and he's played all of 10, 15 snaps on the season and looked good when he was out there, but haven't put him back on the field. They've got people out there, and then really it makes you look even worse though, because if you don't have the pieces and you feel like you don't have that, which maybe judging by the Rodney Gallagher, playing him on the defensive backside, feels like that maybe they didn't pan out and how they expected them to. Then
who could have thought that?
That's on you as well. That's on you as well, because
who could have possibly envisioned such a scenario?
Yeah, I mean, how is that not on you that you misevaluated these guys? And if we really think about it, that's kind of one of the big things that's bothering me is that it's not been, just a couple years in a row. It's been about 3 years in a row they've misevaluated these transfers, because go back to 2021 when they brought in Rashad Ajayi and Wesley McCormick. And, we kind of did this whole dance once before, and they were talking them up in the preseason and saying, oh, these guys are really good. Athletic guys be able to play man, be able to play, more defense and stuff. And the defense was terrible that season. Then 2 years later, we have the one good season in between, but then 2 years later, they're doing the same thing, hyping up these players. And they end up, looking the same way that we've been seeing through these first 3 games. And it's one of the worst pass defenses in the country statistically.
Yep. I mean, it's just like the same thing over and over and over and over and over with this defense. And then you finally, that's the thing about Beanie Bishop last year. You have one player that was making all those plays last year and really kind of helping the defense out. And you think the defense is making strides to get better, and they just fall back and they regress.
Yeah,
they've
evaluated one transfer well in Beanie, but I mean that was about it on the as far as defensive backs are concerned. I'd like to go through a list. I'm gonna have to make a list and look at it and see. I bet you there's a lot more misses in there than there were hits. Charles Woods, maybe you can argue, but we just didn't get to see him for a long enough period to really know. So I don't know, man. The secondary, I think, like you said at the beginning, has been questionable since Jamal Adai left. And so someone is going to have to be a scapegoat here because, like you said, everything's just too loud from the fan base. I don't think we're going to fire a head coach mid-season. Plus, if they're going to wait and end up having to make that move, they're going to want to evaluate this year. And, Neil Brown's buyout drops after like December 31st, 2024, I believe, as well. So they would probably wait on that anyway. But in the meantime, they would have to do something to appease the fan base, especially if they come out and lose to Kansas. And to me, those two scapegoats may be Jordan Leslie and Shadon Brown, or one or the other.
I'm going to tell you, if we come out and lose to Kansas, that's worth it. To me, if we lose this weekend, there's no way you're winning the game in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I just don't see a world where that's possible.
But I think during that bye week is where you would look to see a move like that happen, I think, though, after this game against Kansas. If we don't hear something in the next, few days, which I don't think we're going to really, I think they would probably wait till that bye week after Kansas and maybe make that move on the defensive side. So unless that would spark them to make motivate them a little bit to go play well in Stillwater, I agree with you. I don't think that we have a chance in that game right now with things looking like they are.
Yeah, I don't believe so either.
And it's going to be really telling if Jalen Daniels comes out and has a good game on this defense, because he hasn't looked great at all in their first, few games. So if he comes out and makes our defense look just as bad as they have, then that's definitely going to be somebody's out the door probably Saturday night.
If not sooner, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we heard some news in the coming days.
Yeah.
If not already by the time this show is released.
Yeah, I was about to say, it could happen between the time we get this recorded and released, even, with as loud as the noise has been throughout the fan base. So that's for sure. That's for sure.
Which is, I'm going to start taking whatever I think in the preseason and reversing it, because that's exactly what happens every single year for me. Because last year I predicted 6-6. We finished 9-3 after I predicted that. I predicted 10-2 this year. You starting out 1-2 with the potential of starting out. I mean, like I said, you got the potential to start out 1-4 if you lose this weekend, because like I said, you're probably not going to win that Oklahoma State game. You might have a chance in the Iowa State game, but I don't know. You really got the potential to start the season 1-7, 1-8. So
I know that's what I've seen a few people say, that this could start 1-6, 1-7, and if so, heads will roll on that one. I would think.
I do not see a world where Ren Baker is going to let that fly.
Yeah.
I don't even think he's going to let it get that far. And I
don't think he would either.
The one positive silver lining that we can all really be happy about is that we have Ren Baker as athletic director, because he hasn't hired a football coach yet, but he's hired some other coaches, and I think DeVries remains to be seen, but I got really high hopes about him.
Yeah, I got full faith in Ren Baker. He's definitely, the one positive thing we could talk about. Well, I guess not the only positive thing, though, because, something else positive that we can always talk about here on the Country Roads webcast, Stephen, and that's Magic Mind, of course. You guys have heard me wax poetic about it. It's all natural ingredients. It's great for your energy level. It's great for your stress level. It's great for anxiety. You guys know that I love it. I enjoy it. But what really makes and sells you on a product is multiple good reviews. That's when you get that good word of mouth going, because multiple people have tried a product, told you it's good. So I got a chance to get my co-host to try some Magic Mind this weekend when he came over to do the watch along of this Backyard Brawl here on the CRW that we live streamed on the YouTube channel. And Steven, you got to try the mental performance shot. How did it make you feel? How was you feeling?
I felt great. I felt very focused, but it made you feel the focus without all that, the jitteriness that a lot of the energy drinks and stuff give you. And I loved that, because that's the one side effect that I really hate from the energy drinks and the coffee. Yeah. I love my coffee, but it helps it stay for a longer time. But I felt great.
Yeah, it works great with the coffee. And that's what I was telling Steven as well, is it's not only good, you try it that one time, but really then you get even more added benefits when you use it daily, because I've been using it, for a few weeks now, and it just continues to help me even further. So the longer that you use it, even the better that it works for you. So, multiple good reviews from us here at the Country Roads webcast for Magic Mind, all the reason for you all to try it even more. Plus, you can get the discount code from us here. It's CountryLT20, and that will get you 48% off your first subscription, or 20% off a one-time purchase if you go to magicmind.com/CountryLT. Try some Magic Mind, get the mental performance shot. It can be a positive thing in your life. And, hey, throughout Mountaineer Nation right now, we all need some positive things in our life after this heartbreaking defeat. So definitely could be a good move for you. So definitely use our code. Check that out. And Steven, I guess we can get into the stats of this game. You don't want to go back and look at them, but we're going to have to make it happen. So we'll go back and check out the stats momentarily. But any other thoughts you want to get off your chest, in regards to this heartbreaking loss to Pitt here in the Backyard Brawl in 2024, when it looked like we had it won, held their offense to, I think 4 total yards up until their final 2 drives there. We had made good halftime adjustments. We were playing well in the second half. but couldn't pull it out. Any other things that you want to talk about in regards to that game specifically?
No, it's just there were a lot of positive elements that we've seen. Like we touched, Justin Robinson made a really great catch for a touchdown. I thought CJ and Jaheim both looked really well on the ground. I think TJ Jackson looked good up front. Thought Trey Latham looked really good. So there's certain things to be optimistic about moving forward. But
yeah, the last thing that I got to be critical about is just on Pitt's final drives. Didn't have Josiah Trotter on the field. That's a mistake. Had been rushing 4, went to rushing 3. We were having much more success when we were rushing 4. That was a mistake. And I think when you look at it, yeah, it's on coaching, 100%. 100%.
All of the things are on coaching, So.
Well, and then also, what really got me is the fact that we played Penn State, and in that second half when we were having, some good defensive series there, we thought we got Penn State into 3rd and longs. What happened on those 3rd and longs, Stephen?
They converted.
Drew Aller got out of the pocket and ran for first down. So you'd already seen this happen this year. Yep. How in the world, in this final drive of the game on the line, are you not accounting for that happening again when you've already seen that if your pass rush doesn't get home and you don't sack the quarterback, that they've been scrambling out of the pocket and picking up first downs with their legs on you? How do you not account for that? You don't have a linebacker on the field. The middle of the field was wide open. All you got to do is put a spy on the quarterback in case he breaks out of the pass rush, which had been great that night, and they got pressure on him again. But when they don't get to him, how do you not have a backup plan to account for that on that final series when it's already something you've shown that you're susceptible to throughout this year? It makes no sense.
I mean, there's just so many simple things in late game situations, all the way back to back. I mean, not just last season, but even before that. Last season, you can even point to the Houston game. That should on the Hail Mary pass, and then they're like, we didn't have a tight end back there. Bonehead decisions that come back onto coaching.
Yep.
I mean, they got to be held accountable at some point, and we can't – I mean, I'm still, like I said, giving Neil Brown some time because I think he's done some things well that he deserves a little bit more time. People can be mad at me for saying that all they want to. I understand that. Jordan Leslie, I think he's proven that he doesn't have it to be a defensive coordinator, at least at West Virginia. I mean, he could potentially succeed somewhere else, possibly with whatever scheme he's trying to run. But I think he's proven that he's not our guy.
I mean, if you're not getting it done, you're not getting it done, man. That is what it is. Any of us would have to, endure the same if it was us there as the defensive coordinator and the defense was performing badly. So just calling it like it is, man.
Yep.
But that's pretty much it, man. We just had to get some ranting out about that game for sure. I had a lot of feelings to share in regards to that loss because it put us through a roller coaster of emotions, which I'm sure you guys that watch these here on YouTube, a lot of you guys were in there with us when we did our first live stream watch along with the game, which we're going to try and do those 4 away games throughout the season. I think we had a good time doing it despite the fact that it really, put us in a glass case of emotion, as Will Ferrell would say, throughout that game. But the stream itself was fun, and we always appreciate you guys on the YouTube side. And if you're watching this podcast episode on YouTube, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you don't already, follow us here for a ton more Mountaineer football coverage throughout the 2024 season. No matter what happens, we'll still be here covering the team. I appreciate you guys on the audio side as well, tuning in. If you're there on the audio side, leave us a rating if you would. That helps us a lot. 5-star rating preferably, but any type of rating you want to give us there, give us what you feel like we deserve, of course. And shout out to WVSportsNow.com for always hosting these episodes on their site as well. But Stephen, the last thing we got to talk about, then we'll put this game in the rear view and look ahead to what may or may not happen throughout the rest of this 2024 season. But we're hoping for the best. But we got to talk about the stats from this game. We'll take a look at the team stats, and then we'll get into some individual numbers. Team stats, some of these really surprised me because it looks like, ways that we would have dominated this game. A lot of these stats, if you see them, you would definitely think, if you heard them without knowing the final score from the game, you would probably think that we won. It's pretty wild. 22 first downs for West Virginia, 24 for Pitt. And these two right here are two of those numbers that I'm talking about. 3rd down efficiency and 4th down efficiency. West Virginia 3 of 14, but we were 3 of 4 on 4th downs. We held Pitt to 1 of 8 on 3rd downs and 0 of 1 on 4th downs. So, you see that and you would think obviously that you had a good game. But, It just didn't seem like that, because it seemed like to me, and I think we talked about this throughout the game, every time we had Pitt into a second and long scenario, they would hit a big play. So they wouldn't even end up with these third downs a lot of time, because they would convert on a 2nd and 17, 2nd and 23. The long touchdown pass at the end on their next to last drive was on a 2nd and 30.
Yeah. I remember that exact play that you're talking about too.
Yeah. So that's a problem, but did do good on 3rd and 4th downs. Total yards, we outgained them 398 to 379. Passing yards, yet again, 300 passing yards we give up. I believe that's all 3 games this season. We've given up at least 300 passing yards to all 3 quarterbacks we faced. We threw for 210, 16 to 30 for Garrett, right at that same 53% completion rate that they were trying to work on from last season, but haven't seen too much evidence of that. 21 of 30 for Holstein. Garrett Green did throw 2 interceptions, one being on the final play of the game. West Virginia, this is where they had the big advantage in rushing, 188 yards rushing for West Virginia. They hold Pitt to only 78 yards. Run defense was good in this game, holding Pitt to 2.7 yards per carry. Penalties, far too many flags thrown in this game. We talked about this while we were watching it. 7 penalties on West Virginia, 12 on Pitt. The Mountaineers lose the turnover battle 2-0. They do have the time of possession advantage, 31 to 28 over Pitt. Stephen, what numbers here really stuck out to you the most, and you feel like really changed this football game a lot?
One number that really, not that it changed the football game, that it's just surprising is, we had 188 rushing yards on them and only gave up 78 and still lost the football game.
Yeah.
That's one of those other numbers that really jumps out at you.
It does. Indeed, man.
I just, giving up 300 yards in a passing game again.
But I think a lot of these numbers point out that the offense didn't play bad. You can see which side that has the trouble, and it's the side you're talking about right there. The side giving up 300 passing yards to everyone.
Albany is like
Albany's quarterback 300. I mean, we made every quarterback we faced look great. So Jalen Daniels should be excited to have a get-right game next week, probably.
I'm not. I wish I wasn't this cynical about the upcoming games.
I know, man.
They got to show me something, man.
And, we never feel that way. We always try and keep the gold and blue glasses on, but it's bleak right now. Yep. It's got you feeling bad after this loss. Even after, a day to digest it still. I don't think it maybe after digesting it may have made me feel worse, honestly.
Oh, no, absolutely no doubt it made me feel worse.
Yeah. It's not a good problem to have. All right, so there's some of the team stats. Let's take a look at some of the individual stats, and then we'll get ready to put this one in the rear view finally, and hopefully never have to talk about it ever again. West Virginia passing, like we talked about, Garrett Green 16 of 30, 210, 2 TDs, 2 picks. Holstein 301 and 3 TDs. West Virginia running the ball, 79 yards for C.J. Donaldson on 19 carries with a touchdown. Jaheim White 13 for 46 and a touchdown. Garrett 11 for 49. And the one thing I want to talk about with Jaheim is I'm personally worried that I think he's hurt a little bit more than they're letting us know as a fan base. Because remember that arm injury he suffered against Penn State, and since then fumbled in both the past 2 games. I don't remember him really fumbling any times in his career prior to that. So I'm wondering if it's the arm injury, especially knowing what we know about this coaching staff not really being willing to disclose injuries all the time after they would tell us all year last year that CJ wasn't injured and then come to tell us this offseason that he was injured all year last year. So they've shown, already a history of doing this with running backs. I don't know what your thoughts are there, but I think Jaheim White's arm injury might be hurting him a little bit.
Yeah, and I think if that's the case, I think we really need to look at the strength and conditioning room. And I hate to say that, but I mean, how many times is this going to be the case? We got to start looking at somebody, because this is 3 years in a row now, 4 years in a row now.
Yeah, I mean, if it's arming us on the field, it's an issue.
I mean, your job is to get these kids ready and bulked up to prevent injury. And I understand you're going to have injuries. That's just part of football. But when it's the same things over and over and over every single season.
Yeah. It's hard to digest that, man. Then the last rushing stat we want to talk about, of course, Oliver Straw with the 12-yard run on a fake punt. Pitt playing safe coverage. He gets the fake punt. Play later, West Virginia scores a touchdown to Hudson Clement, called back because of a phantom holding call on Wyatt Milam, and then Pitt goes on to block the next punt and score a touchdown on that. So to me, that was probably the biggest sequence of the game. Oliver Straw made a good play, but it ended in a bad special teams play for West Virginia, where you got two guys there in the protection. One of them, goes to double team a guy instead of picking up the block he should have picked up, leads to a blocked punt, and that sequence was just so detrimental for West Virginia. First of all, don't agree with the touchdown being called back. But then second of all, you got to make that block there on special teams when they come after the punt on your next punt after you have a nice fake. Just a crazy sequence.
Yeah, just absolutely detrimental to the football game, in my opinion. I think that was one of the biggest travesties of the game. I don't understand where that call comes from. I mean, that's literally the way that you're taught to block a person in the game of football. The only way that block, in particular, the way that he blocked him, would have been illegal is if he would have dove for his knees, which he clearly didn't do.
Nope. I mean, he kept his hands inside, foot block, and the guy falls down. I mean,
I think the reason they called it was because he had a hold of his jersey. That does not matter. If he is in front of you, unless he moves to this position or
if that's
this
the case,
position,
they could call holding on every play.
Right. If he moves to either one of his sides, then you call holding. Wyatt had him the whole time and drove him into the ground. That's a textbook block.
Yep.
That's a horrible.
I agree.
I can sit here until I'm blue in the face talking about how many bad calls there were in the game.
Yeah. On both sides, quite frankly.
And that's the most aggravating thing about their fan base is they'll sit there and say that they have more penalties. Well, they should have had more, honestly, because
a lot of those were false starts and things that
they
were
couldn't
obvious.
handle T.J. Jackson in the first half, and then in the second half rolls around and they were holding him every daggone play. None of them get called, and then they call that shit on Wyatt Milam. That's my main frustration about it.
Yeah.
And then in another token, they called the phantom PI call later on in the game. And then Pitt goes down and scores. I'm like, man, I just don't. Probably never will happen. We'll never see it. But I think the only way for that to be regulated in any sense is if these refs are held accountable.
Well, the reffing's bad when both coaches think they got screwed by it. That's how the officiating's bad. It's bad on both sides to that point. There's your sign right there if you're the Big 12 Conference.
I think Neil Brown did say that best when he said Narduzzi's comments were bullshit. He's got no right to complain about anything.
Receiving stats here, Jaden Bray leads the Mountaineers in receiving with a great 44-yard grab, his only grab of the game. Cole Taylor, 4 catches, 43 yards. I believe all of those came on one drive, so it's like, why did we go away from him? Or did Pitt just start game planning for him? I don't know, but it seemed like we should have got him more involved. Rodney Gallagher, 2 catches, 38 yards. Justin Robinson, the catch of the game with his 28-yarder. There was a touchdown there near the red zone for West Virginia, makes the one-handed grab. That was impressive. C.J. Donaldson with the 10-yard touchdown catch. That's about it for receiving stats. Whereas you look on the Pitt side, Kenny Johnson, 5 for 79. Kanata Mumfield, 6 for 79. Desmond Reed, 4 for 50, which they did a good job holding him in the ground game. He only had 11 carries for 26 yards. Holstein was actually the leading rusher, hurting West Virginia on the scrambles that we talked about with his 59 yards. And then, of course, Dejon Reynolds with the 40-yard touchdown catch on Pitt's next to last drive, which the fact that the RDBs, we had 3 guys surrounding him on that play. They had 2 receivers in the area. We had 3 defenders in the area, and none of our guys make a play on the ball. Goes right back to bad coaching there in the secondary, Stephen, because all they got to do is make a play on that ball, and it's an interception, a knockdown at least. I mean, the ball drops right through 3 of our guys into their guys' hands in the end zone. I've never seen anything like it.
That's another thing that I will mention, and I've touched on that before on this show. I want a defensive coach that's going to teach our defensive backs to play the ball and not the defender, because that's how you get those PI calls and that's how you give up big plays like that, because you don't really know whenever you're guessing. You're playing a guessing game on when to hit the guy, and that's why it makes a lot of these catches look like they're too easy when you got 4 guys surrounding him, and that's why you get some of these PI calls. And if you play the ball. See, if you play the ball, you have less PI calls, and you have more pass breakups.
I agree with you, man. It's a problem, man, and they've shown it throughout this season. They've had We've seen them face guarding guys, and they gave up a touchdown against Penn State in the half, just straight face guard, never turned their head around for the ball. And then we've seen other times when guys couldn't make the play on the ball and just didn't even do anything like they did on that touchdown there for Reynolds of Pitt there late in the game. So it's an issue.
And it's a repetitive issue at that.
Absolutely. Defensive stats, yet again, McMillan leads Pittsburgh in tackles, as kind of expected. He led him in tackles last season when we played him. Good player there with 13 tackles. Kyle Lewis with 13 tackles for him. Biles did a good job getting the backfield with it. He had 2 TFLs. And then Jimmy Scott did end up with the sack of Garrett Green in this game. West Virginia, I thought, did a good job with blitz protection for the most part, and not a ton of missed assignments in the run game either, except for that final drive when West Virginia had the ball one more time. That initial run C.J. Johnson was going to make. Neil Brown said that someone whipped on a blocker. They probably would have had a first down run to kickstart that drive. I'll have to check that one out on film review. But other than that, I thought the offensive line did a good job for West Virginia for the most part, run and pass blocking. But Pittsburgh did make some plays defensively. I mean, that's what they're going to do with their blitz scheme. As far as West Virginia's defense is concerned, 8 total tackles for Aiden Garnes to lead the team, 7 for Anthony Wilson. TJ Jackson, as we talked about, just a hell of a game in his first start there. 1.5 sacks and 4 tackles for a loss, 6 total tackles. West Virginia did a great job with their pass rush in this game. Do have to give them credit for that. That is one thing that needed to improve and showed improvement. And that's something you're going to have to continue to have if you want to have a chance with your back end being so bad. Trey Lathan got one of those sacks, and he had 3 TFLs of his own. Half a TFL for Aubrey Burks and Josiah Trotter, who also had half a sack. TFL for Tyron Bradley, TFL for Hammond Russell. In total, West Virginia 5 sacks, 11 TFLs. That is the defensive positive, Stephen. But any of the individual stats that stuck out that you want to mention here before we wrap up the stats from this game and then kind of just give our closing thoughts and move on to talk about the rest of the conference?
No, Aiden Garnes, shout out to him. Picked him in the preseason. He had a pretty good day yesterday. And TJ Jackson again. He had a really good coming out party despite the outcome of the game.
Yeah. He's the best defensive lineman we got, to be honest.
Right now, yeah. And I hate to say that because I love Sean Martin, man. That's my boy, but
TJ Jackson's just shining. He really is.
He is.
All right, so that's the stats there, team and individual-wise. From the Backyard Brawl, like we said, heartbreaking defeat. We've talked about it a little bit, kind of shared our thoughts, talked about the stats, and we're going to get into the recap of the Big 12 here momentarily. But, Steven, any final thoughts before we put this game back in the books, put it behind us for good?
Eat shit, Pitt.
Hey, forever, man. Win or lose, that's one thing we always got.
I hate them. Hate them.
Always hate Pitt, and this doesn't do anything to take that away. It just rekindles that hatred a little bit more.
Yep.
So the victor goes the spoils, unfortunately, and unfortunately West Virginia falls short in a game that they probably could have and should have won. You hate to hear that in a Backyard Brawl, but it is what it is. West Virginia's 1-2 on the season, heading into the start of Big 12 conference play, where they will meet up with some of these teams here that we're going to be talking about, starting with Kansas on Saturday. We will get to them momentarily, but before then, we did have a Thursday game, Stephen, in the Big 12 Conference, and that was Arizona State and Texas State. Arizona State been one of the surprising teams here in the conference.
Shout out Scatterbo.
Get another win. Hey, Scatterbo, I know you got him on your fantasy team. He's been putting up numbers. He's a guy that gets a ton of carries. If you haven't watched him, watch him at the running back position for Arizona State. They look like they might be a little bit better than expected. Maybe not going to be a bottom dweller in the Big 12 this year. Off to a hot start there under Kenny Dillingham. 31-28 win over Texas State on the Thursday night game. And then Friday, we do have a couple Big 12 games, but only one of these is between 2 Big 12 teams that doesn't count as a conference game. And, of course, that was Arizona and Kansas State. We kind of thought Kansas State would handle them, especially playing in Manhattan. Arizona has some question marks as they fall 31-7. Kansas State's defense does a good job. Avery Johnson puts on a good performance, and Kansas State looking like the contenders that we kind of expected them to be.
Yeah, no surprises there. Surprising for Arizona. I know you.
Yeah, especially to see them only put up 7.
Yeah, in Kansas, I don't know. UNLV, man, they've looked good in the first 3 games of the season that they've played.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the other Friday night contest, of course, is Kansas falling to UNLV 23-20. UNLV puts together a big drive at the end, and Kansas, in a similar spot to West Virginia, not expecting to go 1-2 in non-conference play. They're expected to be a contender, and instead they're 1-2, just like West Virginia had those same aspirations that are 1-2. So it's going to be interesting to see these two teams kind of limp into this game, and it's really going to be a huge battle for the rest of the season, because effectively, really, I think whoever loses this game probably feels like their season is over for more or less if they're sitting there at 1-3, 0-1 in conference play.
Yeah, it's going to be hard not to feel that way. I mean, you lose this game, all hopes of a playoff are all but gone. Both sides. It's a must-win game. I mean, it truly
it's a must-win game for both sides and probably both coaches, especially in Neil Brown's case, I think, with the noise we've been hearing. And we'll talk more about that this upcoming week. We'll have our preview podcast releasing on Wednesday. You guys can hear our thoughts on that matchup between two struggling teams right now that weren't expected to struggle, West Virginia and Kansas, both coming off losses now as Kansas loses on Friday. West Virginia falls on Saturday, as we talked about, 38-34 to the Pittsburgh Panthers. And the other Saturday slate for the Big 12 was interesting as well. Some unexpected outcomes, some more expected. One of those that we kind of more expected, Stephen, was Cincinnati coming out on top of Miami, Ohio, 27-16, get the win on the road over Miami. And Cincinnati, I think they look like they get a little bit improved from what they were last season, personally.
Yeah, it's another team that West Virginia should be worried about playing.
Yeah. They got a decent quarterback, I think, with Sorsby. And they're good in the trenches, and we always talk about how we like Corey Kiner. So they got some players. And then the most surprising, maybe, to me, result in the Big 12 was Texas. Texas Tech really bouncing back. We saw them struggle mightily. We thought North Texas would have a chance in this game to at least cover the spread, if not maybe even win outright with what Texas Tech had put on film. But then they come out and absolutely look like a totally different team, scoring 66 points, beating North Texas 66-21. They put up 52 in the first half. So Texas Tech scoring 66 points. West Virginia doesn't play them till the end of the season. That's another scary opponent for West Virginia right there to face.
I was going to say, that's one of the ones we thought we had a gimme. And like you touched on before, Texas Tech could have it turned around by then.
Yeah, especially, they'll probably be hitting on all cylinders by then if they're starting to turn around right now with this game, as it looks like it could be, coming out with a huge win. Oklahoma State, 45-10 over Tulsa on the road. And the thing about Oklahoma State this year that really makes them seem like a big-time contender is the fact that, Ollie Gordon's not even doing all the damage for them. Alan Bowman's actually been passing the football, which, of course, would be bad news for West Virginia, but maybe bad news for the rest of the Big 12 if Oklahoma's can be balanced on offense like that to go along with what they always have, a solid defense and a good run game with Ollie Gordon.
Yeah, no surprises here. That was my pick to win the Big 12. I remain strong on that pick.
Yeah. And they may be close to a top 10 team by the time we play them after, Kansas in a bye week. So, definitely intriguing matchups on the horizon for West Virginia within this conference when you see how everyone else is looking. Definitely seems like a lot of evenly matched teams. If nothing else, West Virginia is probably going to be in a lot of games that were like the Backyard Brawl, a lot of one-score contests. And so definitely they're going to have to get some things corrected if they want to win more of those than they lose, which they're going to need to moving forward when you come out of non-conference play with a losing record. Utah takes down Utah State, much to my chagrin, 38-21. Utah gets it done on the road there. Unfortunately, Utah continuing their early success here in the season. We'll see what happens, though, when they get into the Big 12 conference play. I guess we still got that to look forward to.
I don't know. There's a report that their quarterback had tetanus in his finger, and then it was just a scratch.
Yeah, then it was day to day, so who knows what's going on with that.
He's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. So I don't know. You never know what's going out there. This guy's petitioning for possibly an 8th season.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people go to college for 7 years. They're called doctors.
I hate to say that I called that, but
he's definitely shown to be injury prone. Cameron Rising shown injury prone for sure.
We're probably going to be talking about Cam Rising petitioning for his 11th year of college football.
Yeah, in 2027.
Yeah.
We'll still be talking about him probably. It seems like he'll be 30-some years old playing college football. But then how about this result, Stephen? Because we got to watch a little bit of this one after our game. TCU up big on UCF. I believe it was 28-7, if I'm not mistaken, at one point. And then UCF really just wears on them in the second half. That strong run game they have, running KJ Jefferson, running with the running back RJ Harvey. They have other great running backs there as well. And Gus Malzahn's offense, we've always been a fan of it. It wore on TCU, and they end up sneaking out the win there late in the game over TCU in Fort Worth. So on the road, hard to win on the road in this conference, but UCF gets it done, and they're looking, like an underdog in this conference thus far early in this year, I think.
Yeah, I think UCF is very much a contender early on so far, especially with the way that their offense has looked. And, if they've got the potential to hold strong and, in the fourth quarter, and their defense can hold like they did in this game, then, yeah, very much a strong contender.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so, I think. Definitely looking a lot more improved than they were last season, and we'll see what happens with it. But they've got the first Big 12 win, so we've got a chance to see this season. That's the first official conference game, despite us having these conference games that don't count the past couple weeks between Big 12 and former Pac-12 schools that were previously scheduled. Our first official one is UCF taking down TCU 35-34. Baylor takes down Air Force 31-3. I think that's kind of as we expected. Baylor gets on the winning track there, and they're looking to improve here under Dave Aranda this year. Then we get Colorado, unfortunately, taking down Colorado State. Colorado State talked a big game beforehand, made us all think that they were going to come out and win this game over Colorado without how they played them last year, how they were talking leading up to this one. But Colorado really had this one in hand from the beginning. Never really seemed like Colorado State was too much of a threat to them. So I got to tip my cap for that. I've been tough on Colorado. I've been rooting against Colorado, but they got the job done in that game easily.
I don't know. I kind of feel it's kind of funny because we're in reverse roles now, because you haven't really been high up on them. You're not really a fan of Colorado, and I believe in the hype, and I've been saying that I've been a fan of Prime and everything. I don't know, man. After that game, one, I get that their quarterback was saying stuff. I mean, Shedeur Sanders says shit all the time, okay? For him to act the way he did in the post game, I thought was childish.
Yeah, that pissed me off.
For two, I think it's very comical for Colorado to be celebrating this game like they won the like they're, like the semifinal game in a playoff or some shit. I mean, they're like, I don't know. I guess it's a rivalry, but like,
they're not going to make a bowl game. I mean, they'll win maybe 4 or 5 games total.
And they brought out their entire offensive line to the press conference.
Shedeur Sanders is hurting his NFL draft stock too, because if you remember what was last week, when they lost, he left the field with like 2 minutes to go by himself without his team, didn't even stay for the post game, and then this time won't shake the opposing quarterback's hand. Like, yeah, did he talk smack? Sure. But I mean, after the game, when it's over, you got to still shake that man's hand. I mean, that's just
the name of the
it's
game.
Not a good look.
Respect,
it's not
man.
a good look. Yeah.
There's going to be people that talk shit after the game and everything. Like, I don't know, man. I thought that was childish.
I agree with you, man. And I'm sure scouts are watching that, and that's,
and I'm a fan of his.
For him. It's a con for him. And then the last two games to talk about, both decisive wins here, and those were Houston over Rice, 33-7 in Houston. Houston's bounced back from their earlier struggle against UNLV, which, I think UNLV is a lot better than we all expected. So maybe Houston's not as bad as they initially looked under Willie Fritz. And then, of course, BYU, Stephen, 34-14, handling Wyoming on the road. Impressive win here as they put up points as well to go along with the great defense we've already seen them play early in this season. BYU looks improved, and I know you're hyped about that.
Hey, I'm telling you, buddy, I'm becoming more and more of a BYU supporter the more the weeks go on. I wonder why that is.
That's a secondary team, something for you to be happy about, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know, man.
Might need it. Hopefully not.
Might just become a bandwagon fan. Might just burn it all down and become a BYU fan. I don't know.
It's that bad, man. It's that bad.
Never.
Nah, never. We'll be there every week, man.
Always there.
I'll die with this on my chest. In Morgantown this weekend. Probably won't be a ton of people. I'm expecting attendance to be low. But, we're both season ticket holders, and we'll be there on Saturday.
Yeah, and the bright side is at the end of the season, if they don't win any more games at home, they might owe us some money back, and That'll never happen.
That's how, if you feel like that when you have if you end up having, a losing season or something, that it will make you feel like that 100%. So that's something that, Rim Baker's going to have to take into account when he evaluates all this. And I'm sure he's watching this and evaluating now because the reaction of the fan base has been so loud. But if it gets to the point where they start, starts hurting them monetarily, that's when they really have to start thinking about what's going on. But with that being said, that's kind of one of my final things that I wanted to echo here before we get, getting ready to wrap this one up, is just the fact of, I've seen a lot of people in response to this, being upset when the coaching staff fired, and that's fine to voice your opinion about that and everything. But I think that the wrong move to make is pulling your money out of the Country Roads Trust. That's hurting the athletes. That's hurting, the future, because even if you do want to coach and change, that's something that you're going to need for the future, is those funds in there to help you get players, to help you, go out and hire a new coach. The funds in the Country Roads Trust, the funds in the athletic department through the MAC. So I don't think pulling your funds out is really going to make that much statement. It really could hurt West Virginia in the future. So I don't think that's a way to respond to this. If you want to be vocal on your social media, say what you want to say, do what you want to do, that's fine. I support everyone feeling about how they feel. It's, a negative time right now. Things aren't looking the brightest. So, say if you want people fired, ask for change, because we do deserve that. We've been in the Big 12 since 2012 and haven't played in a conference championship game. I think we can at least expect to play in a conference championship game in this conference at least once a decade. That hasn't happened. So it's okay to voice your opinion and be upset about what's going on. But I just think, pulling your money out of the funds that are going to help WVU in the future isn't the way to go. So that's just kind of one of the last things I wanted to mention here.
And I absolutely agree with that. And you know what I mean? I think, if anything, if you're going to pull your money out of Country Roads Trust, then you're pretty much saying that you don't want WVU to be good in the future, because contributing to that helps the athletes, which helps recruiting, which helps the program get better as a whole. And right now, West Virginia was on a trajectory to have one of the top in the nation as a whole, and that's up there with those top programs that everybody calls the blue blood programs. Everybody talks about how Alabama and Ohio State and LSU and all these people steal recruits from places like WVU. West Virginia has now got the money in those types of in those types of places, and that's with the help. People talk all this crap about Pat McAfee, and if it wasn't for him, he contributes a lot to that fund, as does Pac-Man Jones and a lot of these guys. So I mean, support. As much as we're saying keep on supporting our current athletes, support our former athletes, man.
Yep.
The people that gave their time and their effort and still do voice positive things about our university, which in the public eye in sports media we don't get very often. So appreciate the ones that actually do appreciate the fact that they went here and voiced that very loudly. And that's why I love Pat McAfee. That's a very random sentiment to be talking about right now, but I mean,
hey, he did just give Country Roads Trust $1 million, so he's still supporting,
because he just gave $1 million out of his own pocket to Country Roads Trust.
Yep.
And so we finally have the right elements in place to have a successful program. So as fans, we've got to keep supporting this program, no matter who that coach is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we as fans keep supporting, we will get that coach that we all want to get. And people can talk all that shit they want to, but I'm still in firm belief that we will be in place to win a conference championship, which would at least put us in a playoff spot. At some point within the next decade.
Yeah, we're gonna get there, man. We're gonna get there. We've seen West Virginia be successful before. They'll be successful again. Will it be with some changes on this staff? Will it be with the whole new staff? That's what remains to be seen, and what we're going to be, keeping a close eye on these games for moving forward is to see what happens, see if there is changes on the defensive staff, see if there is improvements on the team, because now you're getting to the part of the schedule that really matters more than ever, and that's conference play. And like you mentioned with the new look college football playoff, conference play has never been more important. So, if these coaches are going to make changes, they need to make them sooner rather than later, and I think we're hopefully going to see some evidence of that, and I think Neil Brown's going to have to make some type of change here, because if not, then that may speak volumes on him as well, that he's not willing to make changes to try and right the ship when it's needed to be righted. in a time that's tumultuous after they've spent a whole offseason hyping things up. So for sure, something's going to have to give here, Stephen, and I think we'll see some type of change moving forward that hopefully leads to brighter days on the horizon for West Virginia, whether it's something that happens this season within the staff or something that happens after the season with maybe a whole new staff. Some type of change is going to come in the near future for West Virginia, and brighter days will come as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We always going to be here no matter what, but I do believe that we're going to be successful again one day.
I do too, man. I do too. We like to wear the gold and blue glasses here, talk about that. That's how we optimistically look at things. I know this episode has been kind of everything but that just goes to show you how kind of things are within the fan base right now. If someone, that's usually as positive as us here at the Country Roads webcast that are always feeling super bright and happy and can try and spin everything the most optimistic ways, that we're feeling like there's definitely some issues that need addressed, goes to show that it's, a definite issue among the fan base, which means it's a real problem within the program.
Yeah. Yep. And it's up to the right people to address it, and not that I will say that I'm not the biggest fan of E. Gordon Gee, but something's got to be done.
Yeah, something's got to be done at some level. And, as they address it, we'll address it when it happens here on the Country Roads webcast. Like we said, no matter what, we'll be here following the team all season. We're going to bring you our 2 podcast episodes a week, our game reviews and our game previews. And, of course, we get to talk a little bit about the Big 12 Conference in those as well, previewing the slate and reviewing the slate like we've done on this episode, as well as reviewing the heartbreaking 38-34 loss to the Pitt Panthers in the 2024 Backyard Brawl. West Virginia currently 1-2 in the 2024 season, about to start Big 12 conference play against Kansas this upcoming week, and we'll be previewing that game in just a couple of days. We'll try and have that episode out on Wednesday for you guys. That's usually when we try and release the preview episode, so be on the lookout for that. Sure, there'll be plenty more to talk about with what's to upcome for the rest of this season, especially have Bradley back with us, have all hands on deck, because it's going to be some must-win games coming up for West Virginia, starting with that one on Saturday, and looking forward to it, man. Stephen, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Eat shit, Pitt.
We'd said it on the preview. That's how we was going to end it. Even on the review after the loss, that's the way we got to end it, because it's just pure hatred in this rivalry, one of the best rivalries in college sports. That's why the games are always close, because both teams hate each other that bad. They always want to win just that bad. Just like West Virginia wanted to win this one. You can see it with how upset the fan base is. You can see it with how dejected the players were in player interviews after the game, coach interviews after the game. So hopefully it means as much to them as it does to us throughout the fan base, as we're all feeling pretty negative right now, but we're hoping for brighter days on the horizon as conference play starts coming up with Kansas. So having said that, that will close out our Backyard Brawl review episode here for episode 195 of the CRW podcast. For my co-host Steven, even after a loss, as always, we got to end it. Until next time, let's go Mountaineers.
If you really want to know, then come on, let's go. Take a stroll down those